Sometimes for growth, we have to drop to our knees. So there's been experiences in my life that have taken me down. I've grown to the greatest potential because I needed a change and I needed to make it different.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Messages from Beyond. I'm your host, Orly Alteras. Join me as we decipher signs, synchronicity, and the language of spirit. Let's begin.
Hi, Susan.
Hi.
I'm very excited to have you on today. Nervous a little bit, but very excited. There's a lot on my mind that I want to ask you. It's such an honor to have you here. So first and foremost, I just want to thank you for being here.
I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you. I have my questions here just to be prepared. I recently read your book, Infinite Life, Infinite Lessons. I have no words. I literally was crying the whole entire book, crying and feeling the healing as I was reading it. And so many realizations and aha moments. And and so I've written down all my questions, and I hope we can really get into the book, into the specifics of what I'd like to expand on with you. And hopefully I have my questions, but if it's an open-hearted conversation and we can just flow with whatever comes up. Uh,
Okay.
I know that you have such a beautiful gift to seeing the other side, and I'm currently really fascinated with how doing this work, connecting with our loved ones, connecting with spirit, with angels, is here helping us. And by accessing these higher realms and teachings, it helps us with life's obstacles, with how this can actually help us as we go through difficulty in our life, whether that be the loss of a loved one or I have a big decision I need to make, and how can this work help me? And in your book, we'll just start straight off. In your book, you talk a lot about the light and the darkness. And in those most painful experiences, we also, for whatever reason, spiritually, we get to experience a lot of light that comes in. And I'd love to just start with your story. I know you were about 4 years old when you first, because I know you had connection with spirit already at a very young age, but there was an event that really made you realize that there is something beyond this physical reality and that there's more to life than meets the eye. So if we can share, I don't want to say quickly, but like the story, because you were in excruciating pain at that moment and then experienced the biggest light.
I was playing with some boys and I wanted to play fort with them. And I was 4.5, almost 5. I was really close to 5. And they said if I went into the garage, which we weren't allowed to go into, and they opened the garage door and said if I went into the garage to the freezer and got popsicles, that they would let me play. I wanted to play for it, so I climbed into the freezer. It was unplugged. I didn't recognize that. I just thought I was going to climb in on the tippy toes, the step up, and I climbed onto that. And I reached up trying to find the popsicles, and they closed the freezer door. And at first, I just thought that I was part of a game. I thought I was in on the game and everything was fine. And then I realized this isn't a game when I heard the garage door thud. And I went into complete terror. I was facing inward. It was pitch black. I felt like there were spiders in there. I'm sure there weren't, but it felt that way because you don't know what's around you in the dark, right? And a little girl, you just feel like you're in a cage. And that's how I felt, like a caged animal. And I started responding like a caged animal. And I was screaming this high pitched sound, and my mother heard it, but she thought it was the animals on the land that we had in heat. Basically, it's the same sound. The sound of terror is that really high pitched sound that cats get when they're in heat and they're mating. And so she disregarded it. I knew I was going to die. And I don't even know what that means. I don't recall ever knowing what death was outside of animals, but I knew that meant go away. I knew that. But there was something innately in me, just as a human, that I knew I wasn't going to survive this and I wasn't going to get out. And that went on for a long time. I was screaming, and then I heard some angels tell me, "Stop screaming," and I didn't. I kept screaming. I was a little shocked because what I call angels were bright lights, but knew about angels. We were Catholic, and I knew about angels, and so that made sense to me, and they come as we understand them.
Mm.
And till this day, they're my angels. And the next thing I heard was one really powerful, what I felt was powerful, like my mom powerful, say, Susie, stop screaming.
Mhm.
We're going to get your mommy. And I felt like I didn't feel like I heard it. It was almost like a but yet, but wait, but one more thing, but I didn't hear those words, but it felt that way. And then I was pulled from my body and I just remember a journey that was amazing.
Yeah. So at that point, you weren't feeling the physical pain anymore, or you were just taken out of your body into this out of body experience.
Yes, the physical pain wasn't strong. It
Okay.
was the emotional. It was the fear that creates the physical. Your whole body responds to a situation when you're in terror
Yes.
for your life. Your whole body is having a response. It's just what it does.
Because I remember you
It's like the
describing how
atomic
you
nervous system.
that's
Just yeah.
cool. I remember you describing, like, your back being pushed up against the and just, like, being stuck physically. I like, the words you described, you could really you take us there when you're describing this.
Yeah.
It was really yeah, and
It
so
wasn't painful, it was
was
immobilized.
immobilized, okay. But at that moment, once you listened to them, you felt like did you feel that your soul went with them to this other place? Because it was a journey now that was completely in another realm.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, it was like I was just all of a sudden on the bottom of a stairway and it was all cracked and old. Now, I want to explain this as an adult because I don't know what thought it was as a child. I didn't understand all of it. But as an adult, I can give you more detail of understanding, not of the experience. I remember the experience. I was at the bottom of a stairway or a stair, yeah, and they were all cracked and it was long. It makes me think of Rocky kind of the
Mm,
stairway. And there was this room, it was a Greco-Roman room. It had pillars, they were cracked, and there was an open ceiling. But I felt like there was a circle. So there must have been cement around the top holding the pillars. And I just knew there was something in the middle of that room that was like a well. I
mm,
just knew it. And as soon as I thought, how am I going to get up these stairs is what went through my mind. Like, how am I going to get up these stairs? Because I felt jello-y.
yeah.
I was on the edge of that well.
Yeah,
And
hold
I
on
was,
one yeah, because
okay,
this is I have a few questions before because you were describing this so beautifully in the book with the letters and the room of heart's desire, and so I just wanna hold off just a second because I just wanna mention something in regards to like you said, like, I'm going back a second to the lessons learned through joy and pain. And now I'm like, I do wanna hear the rest, but I'll just jump to that part since you're already
okay.
in that room.
Yeah.
So is
Yeah.
this the room of the heart's desire? Because I remember you saying what you had said was like,
Where am I?
and then there's I don't wanna I w 'cause you take us on this journey in the book. You really take us from
Mhm.
that moment of the thought, you right? You were jumping from the thought of going up the stairs, and all of a sudden you're up the stairs as if thoughts become things.
They
Um,
do. They do.
but it was
So
very quick over there. So
and
oh,
then I looked down in this well. I think this is where you're headed. I
right.
looked down in this well and I was watching movement and I was here and it looked like DNA looking back. It was all one consciousness. And I could hear people praying what I would call prayers. Dear God, my mom's got cancer. Please don't let her die. And then I heard, I'm going to turn 16 and I want a car and I want to make sure my dad buys me one, but he says no. And God, please make him give me a car. And just all these different desires. And I asked them if they answered all these, and they said, no, Susie. Sometimes what people desire the most isn't good for them. And I asked, where am I? And they said, you're in the room of heart's desires. Now, keep in mind that the way that they could show me was by giving me rooms, but it's really not rooms, it's a
Mm,
place. It's just a place. And it's part of the journey there. And so I only know how to explain it in a room form because there's no other way for me to describe it. It was a circle and it was a place, but it expanded beyond that. very far beyond that. I mean, it was complete expansion, but I have to give it some name.
Yeah,
And like the well, it was
right,
really dark. And it was like, I studied under Raymond Moody, and he said to me, I said to him, how come I didn't see the tunnel?
right.
And this is as an adult woman, and I still was upset that I didn't see the tunnel that everybody talks about. And he said to me, have you ever thought that maybe that was the tunnel? Because I've heard well before that we describe as a
Mhm.
tunnel. And
Right.
it was an aha moment for me. I looked at him and I went, what? We were sitting on a couch and his arm was around me, and I just, what? This man is such a loving, good man. And so when he said that, it was like a life changing for me, because I realized that I was desiring things that I already had seen, and I didn't even know what, I just didn't have the right name for it,
Yeah. And
or the
also,
name
it
that
does it have to do perhaps too, I have these thoughts a lot, that we each will see things that are fitting to us to understand it, meaning like I might experience angels a certain way, in a way that I can process it or that I won't be scared. And so maybe for you, it is what I'm thinking is the well was actually that tunnel or that realization. But do you find that too, that we get to experience things at the level that we're open to receiving or
absolutely 100%. They come as we understand them, and everything that we see, especially children. So I work with children who have near-death experiences whenever I can. It's
Mm,
not very often, but whenever I can. That's why I studied under Raymond, by the way, to get my doctorate in
mm,
divinity, so that I could do that and feel like I had some solid foundation outside of my own experience. And what I find with children is it's very metaphorical, and they don't understand adult stuff. They just don't. And I was me there. And I was probably me there because I was coming back. I knew that. I think we are me there, or ourselves there anyway, but in a different form. So we can be older, younger, we can go through different parts of our journey so that we learn from the experience of life, because that is why we're here, is for knowledge and love and learning. But or the experience. But I was me, but I was just me in a kind of jello-y form. I didn't feel like I could walk up a flight of stairs. Let me say that.
yeah,
I didn't feel like my body could do that. So I was
mm,
questioning, like, how am I going to get up there? But everything is shown to us, so to our level of understanding, and a child's level of understanding is very different. So if you take a child to Disneyland, and I go to Disneyland with that child, we're going to view Disneyland differently. And each child is going to view each ride differently, and each person walking, and each everything is viewed differently, and it's a magical place. But we see it differently, and we take it in as we understand.
yeah.
So it's like
So,
that.
yeah. Also with I mean, I find that this world is all in metaphor and also deciphering the language of spirit for me, it's all in the imagery and the meaning behind everything. It's all the poetry. It's land. When I dream, it's similar to
Mhm.
connecting also to spirit. So it's just interesting how our brain then, I guess, analyzes the information and for us to understand or grasp this place that is just beyond. With this chapter about the room of heart's desires, you described this place you came to while you were unconscious, and then the angels were there, they sang to you. And I wanted to say that in Jewish mysticism, what I loved about this part is when you saw those letters and they were making up people's wishes. And in Aramaic or in Hebrew too, I create what I speak. Like abracadabra is I create what I
Wow.
speak. And in Judaism, like letters have meaning because when you combine the letters, you're creating worlds. And what we say is it helps us manifest and create. But you had said that not all wishes come true, like you just mentioned. And what the ego wants is not what the soul expansion needs sometimes.
Right.
Like sometimes I have wishes, but it's not what our soul or our guides or our spirit wants us to experience. So my
Mhm.
question is, how can we know better what our soul needs, how to follow our heart's desires, and make choices for our growth in terms of and I'll connect it to the yellow brick road that you describe in the book as well, because you had mentioned these bricks that sometimes we put these bricks on our path and we try so hard to make things work, but we actually have a path or like the angels and guides are the pavers, you say. We just have to walk the path. So what I'm asking is, how can we better know what our path is? What is a tool that can
I picture it this way. We have contracts, and it looks like this. If we're meant to be married and our contract and our soul wants to thrive and understand that relationship, we're going to be married. It might be 95, but we're going to be married. Who we marry, how long we're married, the kind of marriage we choose to have, our behavior in our marriage, et cetera, is free will for our soul expansion and growth. So what they're talking about is the path that we have created in contracts is created with them. And all we have to do is step on that path. We don't have to try to pave that part. And then we move through it. So I think of there's 3 doors in front of you. One's red, one's yellow, so one's black. And we're deciding on an adventure that we know is meant for us. We just know it, but we don't know which door to choose. We open one door and we walk into it. So let's say it's marriage. And we open this door and we meet someone, and our soul tells us this is not a healthy person. This is a narcissist. But our free will says, but I love him. And we marry him. That's going down that road. And we can turn around. It's a door, it's not slamming shut. We can open it. Or we might see that person and go, oh, this isn't healthy for me. This is toxic. And we go back out the door and we open the next one. And then we walk into that, and so on. So we have choices on our journey. If we didn't, we'd be robotic. But ultimately, we'll marry someone. We'll be married if that's a contract. So what they're trying to say is walk that path of your contract, and we will pave that for you if you just listen to us, if you just are willing to walk it. So they're trying to tell us that we can walk it and stop being so afraid of the different choices that we make. Allow them and shift. If we see a wall, because they bless and block everything. So if you see a wall, shift. And if you see another wall, shift. And if you see another wall, shift. Before you know it, you're walking the path you're meant to walk. We think we know what's best for us, so we make choices sometimes that aren't. They know what's best for us, and if we pause and listen, we probably won't open the red door. And if we do, we're going to get out of it quickly because we're listening. So it's being presented in front of us, hey, this is not healthy, this is toxic, and we go, oh no. So they're just saying, listen, be present, pay attention. Life is in session, and we need to be present in order to hear the whispers. And that's their path for us.
sometimes it's really hard to listen. Like you keep getting the nudges, you keep feeling that it's not the right thing. And then it also makes me wonder about the contract. I mean, is that part of the contract too for your life lesson to hear that nudge
Yes.
over until you get it in a sense? And even if it takes longer.
Yeah, you ever notice the things that you go through get put in front of you, and then you think you've resolved it, but you
Right,
haven't, and
right,
it's put in front of you again and again?
right,
And that was their statement, "What you run from chases you."
right.
So if you ever notice, I would say this, I am a strong empath as you are, and I tend to draw narcissism into my world. And if I don't understand it and remove myself from it, I'm going to live in it. If I do remove myself from it, I may be running from it, not facing it, and changing the direction I'm taking myself and really looking at it, healing myself, and changing that direction internally
Mm,
because it's an inside job. So if I don't do that, then I notice, this is just an example, that the next relationship I have is that, or my boss is that. When it comes in
right, you
front of
keep
me and it hits me like a lead brick, it's not like they're just narcissists. They end up being involved in my life, causing me trauma. So I have to learn to heal every step of the way. And that is the contract.
wow. And part of that healing is probably because obviously this is what I work through too, is like the setting boundaries and speaking up and saying and knowing my worth.
Yeah.
You talk about self-love in the book a lot, and you say that actually we come here to, I mean, there's a few things, but you talk about like your path. I wrote this all down, but I'm just going to leave it for now. But the soul's
Your
path
soul
and
path.
purpose, and the soul's path is to learn the self-love. And then from there, you can perhaps find your soul's purpose by really tuning into the self-love part.
Or vice versa. Maybe you're heading towards your soul purpose by having pain and sorrow or difficulties, and you recognize your power to get through them and the beauty of who you are, and there's the growth. and there the love comes. I see it this way. We have ego, which is fear-based. We have self-esteem, which is fluctuating at best. Today I feel good, tomorrow I don't. Today I feel good, depending upon what we allow in, because it's an inside job, right? And we have self-respect. So when we are in a place of flux with our ego, we are in fear. We need to work on that, move into self-esteem, which also is fluctuating at best. Then we pull forward the self-respect of our journey. And
Mhm.
all of a sudden, we feel our self-esteem rise. Oh, I've done this and this. So I tell people, pull that forward. That's what it's for. Those are your lessons that you've done good with, that you've actually created for yourself to grow and learn. Automatically, when I feel my self-respect coming in, I'm loving myself. It's automatic. So
Yeah.
it's not a hard thing to do. It's hard to sustain because we have a brain with ego and we have a world filled with self-esteem issues.
Gosh, I'm like in tears. It's so good. It it
Makes
just feels
sense,
so good.
right?
It makes sense. It feels like people that are your guides in real life, not just angels and spirit guides. And it just feels,
They put them in front of you.
yeah, it feels so good. You talk about when I was little, when I was in first grade, my first grade teacher, something that stuck out to me was she taught in Hebrew, it's "V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha," which means love thyself as thy neighbor, or treat others as you want to be treated. For me, I heard that, my ears, it was like I knew this to be true. It's like what guided me, what guides me throughout my life. But you take it a step further in the book, Susan, and you say, if I mean to you, I mean to me, and that you experienced oneness over in the other side too. Can you explain why that? Can you just expand on that a little bit? Because I thought
I
that was
will.
fascinating.
So we are one consciousness. So I feel every experience. Have you ever responded to someone in anger? Do you feel good about yourself when you do that? Exactly. It's very simple. It's not easy, but it's very simple. Anytime I've ever responded in anger or I've caused harm to someone, I harm me. I can feel it. It's, oh, I wish I wouldn't have done that. Oh, I wish I wouldn't have responded that way. The goal is to not react, but to take positive actions to shift energy for yourself. Because when you love your behavior, you have self love. When you appreciate your behavior, you have self love. So when you're walking down a road of someone, like we just talked about this right before we came on, someone attacking you, the goal isn't to attack back. The goal is to not react and give yourself some time. I call it a pause moment. I'll pause sometimes for days. I might talk about it to resolve it inside of me. I go to my trusted people and say, what do you think of this? And this is how I'm feeling, and I don't want to respond with this feeling. As I'm doing that, I'm creating self love for myself because I'm teaching myself to do better. I don't believe in the cancel culture, I believe in the do better culture. And so as I'm moving through life, I'm always trying to do better. Do I always achieve it? Absolutely not. I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be here. But I do everything in my power to do that. Do I always not react? No, react sometimes and then I regret. React is regret. Okay. Response is self love, it's respect. React is regret, right? And response is
Mhm.
respect. And when you learn that, it's
In how
like,
you choose to respond, you mean, in
yes.
places that
So
you.
when you pause and respond, you're not going to have that reactionary behavior. You're actually going to sit back and say, how can I best handle this?
Mm,
And then you're going to wait until you understand it clearly and then you handle it to the best of your ability. So with honesty and integrity and character, because people who pause do that. People who are reactionary don't because they're upset and they're reacting out based on anger or hurt or sorrow or whatever it is. We do that. We're not going to be perfect at it. I'm not perfect at it. No one is. We're not meant to be because we learn from that. I learned by reacting inappropriately and continue to when I do that, how to act differently. So it's all there for lessons. And when I react differently, I have a tremendous amount of self respect. And self respect helps create self love, all of those positive things. I nurture that the best I can. I am a human with a human brain. I want to react. Someone texts me something really mean, right? And I'm looking at it. I remember in the past, I would react and I would text back right away and hit that send button, then go, oh my God, why did I just do that?
Right.
Oh, I go back and read it 10 times, 20 times. I'm so stuck in it. But if I wait and I think about it and I look at compassion and I look at brokenness and I look at toxicity and I decide what is happening here right now with that person, with me, what is this interaction? And I can go to my trusted people and reason things out.
You're
I
also bringing the
ultimately,
control back to yourself in a sense. You're in
yes,
control.
yes.
And
And
can I
so,
just say one more thing, Susan? I
yes,
don't cut you off, but also you're making me think that because I've had experiences where I've reacted and it doesn't bring me to a good place. I get into fear, I get into anxiety, my whole body responds when I'm working from that place, from ego. It could be ego, but it could be just the human part, like you're expressing. So it's making me think if I've learned that reaction doesn't get me to a good place, and I have to, I'm still training that muscle for myself to work from the higher self or from having the control is like what I'm feeling from what you're saying is bringing the control back to me, whether that I pause or so thank you for that.
what
That's such a
what
great tool.
happens? Yeah, what happens is we begin to justify our bad behavior and we allow others' behavior to dictate to us how we are going to behave. And I am one that refuses. And when I do it, I feel, oh my gosh, I let this person decide for me who I am. You know who you are, and I know who I am. And I want to behave in accordingly. And when I allow someone else the power over me, I lose my empowerment. So my goal is to look inside and say, Susan, is there justification to what's being said or what happened here? If there is, make your amends if possible, if it won't injure them or you. I don't believe in doing that. And if you can't do that, then make a living amends in some form. But when I do that, when I step back and do that, I stop justifying. And I always know when I'm justifying, when I'm really justifying, like they deserved what I said to them. They deserved that reaction. They did because they blah, 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 blah. When I'm doing that, I know I have a part because I can't let it go. So what I say to myself is what I try to control controls me. So here I am trying to control this situation, trying to control the outcome, trying to control how they feel about me, et cetera, et cetera. And now all I think about is that, and it's controlling me. I give all my power away. We do that with our children even. They pit you against your husband kind of thing, and they do something and you get really mad. They own you at that point. You're
Out
reacting.
of control, literally. Like
Yeah. I don't want someone else to own my choices. I want to be empowered. And so before I do something, I always pause and say, what is it that I really know is right for me here? And if I don't know, again, talk to people you trust and ask them, what do you think? These are the things I'm thinking and I'm considering. And then go back inside and re empower yourself again and say, what's my next right step? Not what can I do to make this right? What's my next right step? It may be to do nothing, to let it be what it is and let it turn out the way it turns out because spirit's involved in everything. So it may just be that.
letting go of control, like, sometimes when we don't know, I find that also I have to remind myself to wait a minute, and the answer also comes, or if especially if I talk to spirit, sometimes I get so in my head that I can't even hear the guidance, and,
Yeah.
of course, then people I trust can help, but it's sometimes with life I wrote this down too, but with, like, life decisions. Do I leave? Do I stay? Do I take this job? Or there's so many life decisions. It's hard. It's really hard to make a decision because you want the best for yourself, but there's fear involved. And what if I make the wrong decision? And so I take that sometimes, like you're saying, to take time, pause.
Yeah.
Are there
I
other
tell,
ways that you feel what can help in those critical decision making moments?
Yeah, and I tell people when they come to me, "You'll know when you know and not a moment before then,
Mhm.
and you can't know what you don't know. You just can't." So, I when people come and say, "Should I leave him?" And I say, "The fact that you had to ask me that question tells me you don't know, and you'll know when you know, and not a moment before then." And they go, "But I should know, I should," and I go, "You can't know what you don't know." And or maybe something happens, for instance, I had a lot of death by suicide in my family, both my brothers and my mother, and I write about that in the book, and I thought I should have known, but I can't know what I don't know. So
Mm,
even though my mom said something to me that felt off, I as a human could not conceptualize, even though I'd been through it with my brothers, I couldn't conceptualize that my mom would do that. So I didn't know. I didn't know, even though there might have been a part of me somewhere that went, "What did she mean by that?" when I left that day. But I couldn't take it in. She's my mom. I love her. I couldn't take it in. So we can't know what we don't know, but we think we can. And so after it happened, I blamed myself. Like, I should have known. I should have known. I'm a reader. I should have known this. And I beat myself up for so long. And then I recognized, Spirit said to me, "You can't know what you don't know." And maybe I wasn't meant to know. It's her journey.
mm,
And it doesn't even matter. I just couldn't conceptualize. So I give myself grace. I tell people carry a grace card because you're not going to know a lot of things on this journey and you aren't meant to necessarily. And that's how we grow. The next time someone behaves in that way, I'll know. But I carry a grace card and I don't just use it for others, I use it for me. Spirit does not give us pain to harm us. They give us, allow us, I'm going to say this, they allow us the experiences of pain to show us where to shine our light. And that is on us. We shine our light on everyone else. Look what you're doing. Oh, I love you. You're so wonderful. We give compliments. We blame. We focus. We justify. We do all these things. We're always shining our light outwardly. It truly is to help us shine our light on us so that we make better decisions, so that we have self respect, so that we have dignity, and we create self love through our life path, which is our life purpose. Our soul purpose is self love. And that comes from our life path and how we interact in this world. The soul already loves you. The soul is
right,
already pure love.
right.
But we want to create a bond. We want to integrate our world here, our experiential world, with our love of soul and our love from soul so that we become whole and grounded and feel empowered in our journey. What a powerful way to walk through this journey,
Mhm.
empowered. Most of us feel like everything is taken from us. And so many of us feel that we don't have any ability to be empowered to make different choices when we actually do.
Right.
The only caveat to that is children. Children sometimes don't have the ability to make a different choice
Mm,
because of who is in their world or what's
right.
happening around them. But they learn how to do that through those experiences.
There, because children are also need to be taken care of. The adult is the person for
Yeah,
an amount of time in their life. They can't make choices that are they can't leave if they want to, for example, or
exactly.
but oh,
Exactly.
this is so good. When you're talking about that alignment, to me, it sounds like the alignment of when the soul is in alignment with the human self, and then we're walking the path. And my hope is that I always wish for myself, but for everyone to be able to like, whoa, if we were all in alignment with our soul and
I
sometimes I'm like,
feel
why don't we come here already in that alignment to experience life to its fullest? Like, why do we have to go through all of this?
because you wouldn't
Yeah.
experience it to the fullest because you wouldn't know how to appreciate it because there'd be nothing to gauge it against. That's why I always say you cannot see the stars without the black backdrop of the black. We're not just a soul having a human experience. We're a human having a soul experience. And when we recognize that back and forth is when we start to integrate.
For me, it's really listening and trusting that guidance, the higher self. That's what, for me, it opened up completely when I was like, oh my gosh. And there is guidance here to help me too, or I mean, because you do internal guidance. system, but
The
maybe we
soul
can
is
talk.
always speaking to you. I
Right.
always know the best, not the right thing necessarily, but the right behavior. I
Mm,
always know what it is. I just don't always want to do it. So what gets in the way is ego and my self-esteem, mostly ego. And ego isn't bad. I want to say this. Excuse me. People say, oh, you need to get rid of ego completely in order to live a good life. And my point here is going to be this: ego is necessary in order to survive here.
mm,
It is a necessary tool. So if I don't care if the car hits me because my ego is not protecting me, I want to be here and solid. So my ego is going to be in protection mode for me. So it is a necessary thing, but it also carries this other dark side, which is fear base.
mm.
And I believe, excuse me,
No, go ahead.
no, why my throat's closing up. I believe what we fear, we feed. What we feed, we believe and perceive. And what we believe and perceive becomes our reality. So if I am sitting in fear base, living in fear base, that becomes my reality. I'm going to feed it. But if I fear a car hitting me, that is my ego doing its job.
Protecting.
I want to be
Yeah.
whole. Yes,
Mhm.
I want to be protected. We have to balance that. Am I in an unnecessary fear right now and feeding something that isn't really happening, which is illusory fear? Or am I in a fear base that is protecting me, which is real fear? The lion's chasing you down the street, run. And so we want to know the difference between that and intuition. And again, in my book, I talk a lot about that because I want people to learn what the intuitive hit means and feels like next to the fear base, the illusory fear.
I even
Uh,
I mean, I wrote here literally, you speak about fear and intuition and how to tell the difference. And I wanna if we can go into the ways in which we can distinguish the intuitive voice more clearly and distinguish between the real fear and imagined fear. So you talked about now the real fear versus the imagined fear, which is probably just we're growing what if in our head.
yes, exactly.
And
The
so
what if is always my projection. So
okay.
when I'm projecting into the future, I'm always, what if this? What if that? What if it doesn't work? What if there's my fear? And I'm not even in present times. Life's in session. I need to be present in
And that's
life.
the imagined fear, the what ifs.
Yes, that's the illusory fear, the
Illusion.
what ifs, and that comes from projection usually. True intuition is easy and smooth. No matter the message, it comes in soft and gentle. Fear comes in with panic. And that's how you can tell the difference. So when my intuition says, ooh, this isn't a good situation for you, Susan, you need to get out of it, I'm going to respond to that. If I'm going, what if it's not a good situation? And what if these people, blah, 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 blah. And I'm
Mhm.
panicking or feeling fear based, or I'm responding in a way that, or hearing it in a way that I know is coming from my brain. It's not a whisper. It's not gentle. It's not guidance. Guidance is not panic. Guidance is a message of truth. Fear is not. The fear, the illusory fear.
Yeah, no, it's so interesting because I've I know what the intuition sounds like of that's the good feeling, the good sensation or the thoughts that are the whispers. Make a left turn even, it could be, or go that way, or it's very like short and precise. But it's I think for myself on my journey currently where I'm at, it's to really hear also if it's a fear based intuition that it's still going to sound like you're saying, so thank you. It's going to sound very clear. This is not for
Calm.
you, calm, step away, protect your energy, or move out of this situation. As also the feeling will probably come in if I think about it. Like I'll just not feel comfortable if it's not.
Right. We use our clairs in our intuition.
Like,
And clair just means clear in French. Just want to say that. So for
yes,
your
yeah,
listeners,
yes.
it's clear seeing, clear knowing, clear feeling, a clear hearing. It might be in our head or outside of our head. And we use those clairs in our intuitive hits. So I might just have a knowing, and it's clear, but it's so clear that I don't want to turn left on that street. And I will tell you, it's so interesting because yesterday I was telling someone I was in a place in pretty deep area of LA,
Mhm.
and I was with my daughter. She was young, and I went around a corner and I heard, "Don't drive down that road," and I didn't listen. And a couple men came out, I was going very slow. It was very dark, came out in front of my car and said to me, "Turn around. You do not want to go down this street. Turn around." And I was, "What?" And I panicked inside because that's a real fear. That's not illusory. He
Right.
was telling me something. And so was the other person. They really just stopped my car.
And how interesting that you didn't hear the voice, but then literally, you could even
But
say
I
the
knew.
angels came in that moment.
Yeah, yeah, I knew not to go down that
Right, right,
street.
right.
And I was turning left, so it's interesting you put it that way. And I left, and about 6 months later, a family got lost, turned down that street, and they were killed. This was a street where you don't go down because they will take your car. I mean, it was a dangerous gang. I didn't know that. These men were put there by my spirit guides. I know it because I didn't listen. And I'm grateful for that. I'm so grateful for that. And I imagine that maybe I want to believe that they helped this other couple also, but they still didn't listen. Maybe they got scared that these people were playing with them or were going to try to hurt them, so they sped up. I don't know. But I knew when that man on the right side or where my daughter was sitting, got in front of my car because I was going very slow, and he was pretty far back, but he put his hands up. And I knew,
Yeah,
oh, I need to listen. I need to heed this. Had I not listened, God, I don't know what would have
right, right.
happened, but it doesn't matter. I know it wouldn't have been good.
Yeah. That's why I feel like it reminds me of a story of my sister. She was with her son in the carriage walking down the street, and I can't remember the details, but a man literally told her, came into her path and said, "Stop." And she stopped, and a deer came running, like it would have gone straight into her carriage. And I think for me, it makes me feel like there's always the guidance is here. Not that we don't get it's almost like a second chance in that moment, but it comforts me knowing that if we really listen or if we're really attuned in, we're protected. And they
Unless it's
Yeah.
in our contract to leave. So I believe we have exit points. We
Yes.
are in it having a human experience,
Oh, I love it.
and our bodies are weak. And if we don't take care of our bodies, we could get sick. If I drink and drive, they're not planning on us drinking and driving up
Right,
there.
right,
It's part of
right.
a contract. But
Yeah.
if I do that, the chances are that I could cause a terrible injury or die from an accident. So we do have choices that we make that are not contracts. They're not
We
contracting for us
will.
to be using drugs,
Right,
okay, and getting in a
right,
car.
right.
And that's just silly to think they'd do that. However, we have an exit point,
Mhm.
and that is part of the contracts, our exit decisions. Make a better decision, basically.
Right.
Make a different decision. And does that make us bad? No, but we have to make healthy choices in our journey. We have to in order
Mhm.
to sustain our journey because we have a human body and
Mhm.
we have a human brain.
Yes.
The heart has 40,000 neurons, and the heart carries memory capacity. It has learning capacity, obviously. It's called the mini brain. It talks to the heart more than the heart talks to the brain. And they've proven that neurologically. I believe, from what spirit tells me, that our soul seats, SEAT, seats in our heart and our memories that we need, because our brain is full of junk. We can pick up everything, every single thing. That we don't need all that. That isn't all the experiences we need. But our soul will carry the ones that we need to teach us as we cross over, as we share with our higher self and rejoin ourselves. So I really feel that is where the truth lies. Because whenever I look into my heart space, I make different decisions. My truth is there.
I was driving this morning, Susan here, I'm recording, and I work in this crystal store, and I decided to record here today. And on the car, it said La Lèvre, which means to the heart. And I clearly heard, like, just remember going back to the heart, going back to the heart, where listening to the heart. That's
Yeah. What does our heart
wonderful.
tell us? What is
Wonderful.
the,
Yeah.
yeah.
I just wanna end with this question because it's on my mind too in terms of spirit guides. As I'm starting, I've been doing this for a bit, it's always easier for me to hear for others as opposed to myself, it's just the way it is, if it's loved ones who passed, for example. But with spirit guides, I'm finding that because it's not so evidential, it's all my imagination of who I think is speaking to me. I've struggled with the trusting of, but is this my imagination or is this really a spirit guide? And do you have any advice for those starting on their journey and connecting or wanting to connect with their spirit guides? How can we validate for ourselves or gain more trust in them? Is it
I believe that being wrong helps us learn how to be right.
mm,
As long as it's not harm, like self-harm or harm to others, whatever you hear, trust, and they will recognize that you're listening. And once they recognize you're listening, they're going to make it louder and more clear. But if you just allow yourself to trust it and it comes out that, oh, this wasn't accurate, you're going to learn what that feels like,
mm,
which will teach you the accuracy. Oh, that feels just like that
mm,
time when I was inaccurate. So there is no wrong. And that's how I learned. Now, that's my best advice. I learned to be accurate by being inaccurate. And that was okay. I was willing to do that lesson because it created an accuracy in me that I went, oh, this feels different. This
mm.
feels in my gut, not in my head, or whatever it is. It feels
Mhm.
different. I'm going to trust this now.
Thank you so much. I think like where you were talking about the sensory, it's like the goosebumps or they use our senses. It's literally the senses. Like I'll get if it's cold outside, this is something that I received too. It's cold, the hairs on your arm will go up. And so it's cold. So the same with the knowing
Yeah.
and it's like you can
Yeah.
start working with it to get the signs to know that this is what it feels like when it's in truth as opposed to just
Yeah. And
yeah.
that's what happens. They start to come in and they say, she's recognizing.
Yeah.
The first goal is always to recognize that you have the ability to tap into intuition. Then it's the learning process.
Yeah.
And I talk a lot about that. And I actually go through ways to do that and to tap in because I have a lot of exercises in the book to learn
Mhm.
these things. And once you get there, you will make the mistake again. I want to say that we do
Yeah.
nothing perfectly. We are not
Mm,
meant to.
mm,
We would learn nothing and
mm.
we'd be robotic. So we will continue to have to learn. That's the beauty of the experience and being in an experiential world is that we get to continue to learn and grow.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, Susan. I just listening to you, I don't know how to describe it. Just it's almost listening like to the angels sing, literally. I say that from the most sincere place. It's like drops of wisdom and your experience, all of it, all these years, I feel it and I'm so grateful. I feel like I learned so much just from this 1 hour with you. I'm like, "Oh my god, that's so much now to help me on my path, hopefully to help whoever's listening on their path." This book, it's out already, right? I know you have a book
Yes.
signing actually out. I'm gonna try to make it on, Saturday. I don't know when the podcast will be out, but I've been recommending it to everybody. It's just beautiful, all of the exercises inside, really the introspect, going within, asking all the questions to yeah, I'll just see if there's I was just gonna ask the last thing, if you have just a moment for that, is like, where do you see humanity for a better future for humanity? How do you see that happening?
Sometimes for growth, we have to drop to our knees. So there's been experiences in my life that have taken me down. I've grown to the greatest potential because I needed a change and I needed to make it different. And I believe humanity will do the same thing. I think they're pretty low right now. It's pretty low. And I think people are suffering. But I know that dropping to my knees creates a circumstance for me to rise. And believe me when I tell you, still, regardless of what's happening, we rise.
That's where the darkness, the light can come in the darkest of times, the most amount of light,
And it's the brightest.
brightest, yeah. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. Thank you,
Thank
Susan.
you.
Truly, and where can people find you? I'll put it in the show notes as well, but go find
Susan
you.
Grau official on all social media and susangrau.com. It's GRAU. Everyone wants to make it a W, and they can go to my website and read about me and things like
Mm.
that. I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate you having me.
Thank you so much.